right, welcome to the show. This is Podcast Mark, where I invite my friends on to talk about random stuff. Sometimes it intersects with marketing, AI, and business, and other times it's just about biohacking and staying alive. So, welcome, Etan.
Yeah, no, great to be here. I'm super excited.
I think,
Yeah,
well, you're one of my first guests. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'll have Etan on. He's cool. He goes through a lot of crap, and we get to talk about it.
yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like me.
So how's this year gone? We're at the end of 2023. I think we're in between Christmas and New Year's. Good time for reflection. So what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, this year's been quite the whirlwind. A lot of new, and building from business to family. My son is turning 2, so it was
Ooh.
his kind of second, second year where we're going through all of that and continuing to learn all of that. Going through business and learning the best way to grow, because I've only gone on to build my business about 2 years ago as well, when he was born,
Mm.
right? So it's been a kind of a continuous refining and learning and building. So, because naturally, starting a business when your first son is born is a great idea.
It's so funny
And
because I have
yeah,
my set, let's see, cousins, and then my in-laws. They have a bunch of young kids between that 2 and like 6 mark, and it totally reminds me of that phase. My kids are 10 and 11 now, but back then
yeah.
I was like, man, that was so much work. That was a solid half a decade of just nonstop work, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting, it's scary, it's fun, it's it's all of the above and all of those things. And those of us who kind of want to be good at everything, it becomes very apparent that you really have to choose where to put your focus.
You have no idea what you're doing. Is that what you learned? Because that's what I
Oh
learned.
yeah. I mean, I courses and things and pretty much like anything. What's pretty fun, it's you can learn all you want, but when you're actually doing stuff is when you like, oh, none of that mattered that much. Okay, cool, good to know.
It's so funny because, well, I think what you learn is that, every single kid has their own personality and they might not fit any of the rules that you learned in books or talking to other parents even. Like it's just every person's super unique and
Right.
that's gonna go.
Yeah, I mean, that's been definitely every day the learning of, that anyone could say anything. At the end of the day, it's when you're when you're trying to put him to sleep, that's when you'll learn what works and doesn't work for
Yeah.
him.
Well, it's funny because usually the really judgmental people where they're like, well, when I have kids, I'm gonna blah 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 blah. And you're like, okay, let me know how that goes. Because unless and some of them get lucky and they have like a kid that's just super easy, but most of the time, no, it's not gonna go how you plan, and it's gonna be harder than you thought. And the problems that you thought you were gonna have, you might not have, and you might have a whole different set of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a good learning lesson. And then the business side, that's really hard because I want to tell you like, oh well, the first 2 years are the worst, but now it's like, no, you're just getting into the hard time. Because now they can
Yeah,
move.
yeah, I'm taking it, one step at a time there. But I feel like I have been very lucky though, because very quickly I decided to just listen to people who've done this well or have put stuff together that I can model from. And I think that's been a really big aha for me as a whole from the beginning, was model what works, only do what works. Don't start to think you're smarter than it. Just do what's worked and then work within it.
Yeah. Well, I
um,
think just be open, take advice and don't
yeah.
assume you know anything I think the older I've gotten, the more I've kind of adopted that. Like maybe I don't know anything about this. Helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I've definitely taken much more deliberate of I have the right to not have an opinion type of
Yeah.
situation, or not think about certain things.
Well, and listen to
But
every
it's
solution too.
yeah, especially for people who've been there. If they've actually done what I was looking to do, is where it's became apparent that okay, there's actually real advice out there that's really practical, and I should at least do attempt to do the advice before
Yeah.
trying to
No.
make my own rules.
That makes a ton of sense. I love that. Well, and that openness helps you in business too, I'm sure. So let's talk about that. Let's talk
Sure.
business 2023 because I think we both went through a bunch of interesting things
Yeah.
happening. Let's talk about your biggest win.
Yeah. Biggest win is definitely stems from my absolute, loving relationship to the digital marketer community. I will say that. I mean, and it relates obviously to you and to everyone there as far as just really applying the things from there and the opportunities that opened for me to speak in traffic and conversion in January, which I think is definitely a major win for my journey and growing in my field and what I hope to accomplish.
I love that as part of what you've done because when we first talked, I think we first talked on a podcast, wasn't it? Like maybe
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
yeah, that was the pod. We first had a podcast. Yep.
that's funny. Yeah, and that was that this year?
That was no. This was last year. I
Last year?
think
Okay.
Q2. I think just about the beginning of last year, and then I came to speak at the agency, the
Yeah.
live talk we
Mhm.
did, which I think was last year, but time is now beginning to.
Oh man, I don't know what year
Yeah,
it is or month. I keep having to check the date lately where I'm kind of like, I don't
I'm pretty
something
sure. I'm like 90% sure it was last year.
what the day is.
Yeah.
Well, we have that in 2 weeks, so that's huge. But I will say, you getting involved in the community, and this goes for, anybody who's trying to establish themselves as an authority within a market. If you just pick a community, just say, hey, I'm gonna join this one community and I'm gonna crush it, you'll make way more progress than trying to be like multiple places.
That is such a that's it. I mean, and what's weird is it happened so naturally. It wasn't my intention, like initially. Like I kind of came in and I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen. That was number one. And two, when I actually started to interact with the community members and kind of, hey, I saw you talked about this thing, and I just started to get resources from them. It made me realize that all these awesome, brilliant people want to support each other there. And I was like, I'm actually gonna, for the first time in the first community, I'm gonna do my best to
Yeah.
help others in that community, like those who are helping me in that community. And it really made me want to share things and really use things. And of course, you put the ultimate. You after our first episode, you decided to have a series
Oh, that's
with
right.
us and that digital marketer, which basically meant, dude, you better get some progress every 3 months because this is a quarterly thing. You
The
better get
update.
something to talk about.
What did you do? Uh,
Yeah.
well, it's fine. I think around that time, you were one of the first people I even pitched that to because I was thinking, I'm like, man, it's nice having the people on, but the episodes are short. You can't really cover much of
Mm,
anything. But if we did the series, then we could say, okay, let's see the progression and how you kind of developed, and you're applying the tools. So I think for now, like that's my biggest goal for next year is like, hey, how many things have I learned over the last several years that I've never tried? I've talked about and
right.
seen the result of, but I've never actually done it for my business. So
Sure.
I'm trying to all your stuff too, because I know, one of my favorite things that you talked about was actually the event management, the launch
Mm,
for one of the spas. And I was like,
yeah.
that's perfect. Like that's something I can try.
It's super fun too. I mean, it's just one of those things. That's what I've been trying to go a lot towards. How can we have like a lot of fun and get the results
Hmm.
versus just like another thing on my computer?
Oh yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think the experience side of it, that's what everybody's into now. And it was kind of driven by Damien too loud. David, too loud. Okay.
So,
But the event side, the experience, I think that's going to be the future of all marketing and business in general, because I think everybody's kind of tired of the impersonal, the
yes.
commodities, the kind of just buying crap and
It's
whatever,
a
wherever it comes from.
I it's incredible to me, and I've worked very closely with a man who was the CEO and founder of a major kind of entity, and he was just so angry all the time about people commoditizing everything and like no
Mm.
one can answer a phone for customer service and no one everything is moving, and it's so fascinating to see even more and more tools are being developed in that direction for just have your AI assistant, just have the this, that, and this. And it's just all being automated when in reality, what we're craving more and more of, which is why we've seen direct mail, right,
Mm.
start to come make a comeback, is this kind of personal, nostalgic almost. Oh, a mail for me, right? That's why it's people
Oh,
have been
yeah.
seeing that work.
That's so
Uh,
caring.
yeah, a handwritten note. Even though you can automate those things, it's still that thought above above and beyond just the norm, and where most companies are trying their hardest to eliminate all human aspect of it. I
Yeah.
think, I think really that's where the wins are going to be in those, like, how can we be the most human, and more than that, like, care to give a good experience that would be above, what people would expect.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think the human side of it is really important because now, well, it's kind of funny because I think now AI's around, you have kind of have a new appreciation for humans because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to a person right now. And I think people need that, they want that connection, especially when you're talking to a
For sure.
company, customer service, or
Yeah.
and I think we've all been kind of like trained to accept, oh, let me call up this giant corporation that has more money than God. And
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm gonna get sent to some call center in India or something. And
Yep.
you're like,
Yep.
okay, you have all the money. Like if anybody should be able to handle good customer care, it should be you guys. And you guys have kicked the
Yeah.
ball. Like, what's
Oh
going
yeah.
on?
No, I mean, it's amazing to, it really is this, I worked for a company owned by private equity company, right? And it became very apparent the focus, which was, let's, once they built it to a certain amount, let's cut every single fat that we can, everywhere, gut it as we can, make it the barest minimum. The employees there become, basically, not a lot of opportunity for growth, but that doesn't matter. They could just grind them out.
Yep.
And then let's cut support. Let's send it over abroad. Let's cut tech. Let's send it abroad. And I just saw it happening as it was, within that company. This was like 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm.
And you just could see, like, they would bring in 10 people at a time, knock them out. Every Friday they would start firing and cutting trimming the fat up until it was barely able to survive, and everyone are just,
Yeah,
um,
suffering.
and no one's winning from that. I mean, not one, besides the shareholders for a while
Well,
until they
and that's
sell
the
it because it
thing.
looks like it's making more money.
Well, and that's the way the whole kind of economy has been built. Because if you think about a lot of times when yeah, and they used to come out with more records of the CEO hiring,
Mhm.
because like, oh, this guy just got $1 bazillion, and if even if he leaves after a year, he's still going to get $1 bazillion. You're like, okay, well, if it was me and I knew that I could up the stock price by doing a bunch of stuff that didn't increase longevity of the company, but actually increase the stock price in the next 6 months, which is the contract term, I would
Yeah.
do whatever if I was a unethical, greedy person, right?
Yes, and I'm sorry about the pop there
Ah,
for
that's
a
all
sec,
right. We
but
got we got parent we got
it looks like we're aligned with a lot of these things this morning.
But
Yeah,
no, well, it's
but
funny too because the there's a paradox between like your expectation of small business is that they're going to have
mm,
awesome customer care. You
yes,
probably have to talk to the owner, like you
yeah,
are going to demand everything of a small business. But when it comes to like a $1 trillion corporation, you're like, well, I can't get a hold of anybody at AT&T because they're too big. It's like
that is such a good point, man. I mean, that is
it's like
such a good
opposite.
point. The expectation is like, oh, they won't answer, and they're like the giant conglomerate that
Yeah,
can
you're like,
definitely
oh, well,
handle
that's
it.
understandable. It's like, no,
That's
we should be very upset when your house burns down and you can't get the $1 trillion company to
yeah.
rebuild it in less than 3 years. Like, what's going
It's
on?
and I think the dangerous part of that is that some small business owners see that from the big ones and say, oh, I should be able to do the
Yeah.
same. And it's like, no, you can't. You can literally can't afford to do that.
Well, I guess
um
you could. You could be like, I'm gonna act like a big guy and be a jerk to my customers and rip them off and increase prices whenever I feel like it. And
right.
and then
Yeah, but
they'll,
you'll be dead.
they'll accept
I
it.
mean, you're in a local market where they're in the whole like country. They know the numbers are in their favor because it's like, I need this service. I need a phone, right? So
Yeah.
you're gonna work with whoever until you have a better option. So yeah, I
Oh,
completely.
but it's car companies too, because I have Teslas, and you think like Tesla, well, it's should be automated somewhat. Probably, the cars are less technical, like less stuff can break, and so they must have like amazing customer care and stuff. And it's like,
Mm.
no, no, we've had issues where you like, hey, oh, they're gonna send somebody out to fix your door, which isn't closing right or whatever, and then they're like, well, I can't fix it. You got to bring it in, and so you end up doing
Oh
like
yeah,
laps of
I've
effort.
I've had way too much of that recently. It's it's really odd. We're in this very weird place where for some reason we've like taught our economy and businesses that they can get away with not being very
Very
caring or
good.
not being very good at what they do even, or just and I'm not sure, where, or is it because did we stop suing each other, or
No,
I don't,
I think there
not to
was
that
just so
degree, but
much there was so much money to go around for the longest time that everybody just said like, well, if you don't want to buy from me, like whatever, I'm gonna get somebody
yeah,
else to buy from me. And so I think
that
it's
makes
become
sense.
this, you don't have to be good because there's always going to be money. But now it's kind of like there's not going to be money anymore. So or you're just going to be more careful with your spending, right? You're going to say, well, I got to spend this money. I'm going to make sure that it's the best quality product, that it has a great warranty, that they'll
Right.
replace because I can't just buy another one. So I think it's changing buyer habits too.
That makes, looking at the definitely where the economy and what we're seeing that's working more on the guarantees side and all that jazz. People are needing that assurance more and care to have a partner who's like, wait a minute, do you actually have a team or is it just you? Is it like what is this? Yeah, people are definitely more like afraid. I feel like, in conversations with a lot of even clients, it's kind of that all these elements. And it's funny because I've had a big mental shift around this. I used to be, and you'll find this funny because you'll be like, yeah, I mean, a lot of us already know this very well, but I was always
No,
like, oh, just direct response type stuff in branding. I don't need to position myself as anything. I just gotta write a good ad or have a good sales pitch and I'm good to go. And I think that works to an extent, but people start to, when people are looking for more assurance, they're also looking you up a lot more and they want to
mm,
see what you're about and they want to see, wait a minute, wait, if I'm going to invest this much with this person, are they, did they just talk the talk? Or they're walking the walk? Are they, um, and it's funny, I found myself recently putting a lot more effort onto, okay, I'm going to start putting organic and figuring out my flow for that,
mm,
which I haven't done pretty much ever. It's mostly been, family stuff.
yeah.
But now I'm realizing, something that a lot of people have realized already a lot of time, but it's a matter of, okay, I got to really make sure that I'm out there putting value so people can hear me, see me before they, if they feel the need to look me up, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. This
You
guy's
know,
a real deal.
well, I think now it's now people are starting to do that again, where it's like, well, I hate to say it, but especially in marketing, like there's so many companies that have been burned by marketers where they hire
Oh
one
yeah.
firm and they hire another firm. And I think what happened on that side, on the marketing side, is just a lack of cohesive strategy, where it's just like companies like, well, we need social media, so random social media firm, and then oh, we need paid media, random paid media firm.
Mm.
And all of these firms have their own concepts of how things should
Yep.
be done and nobody's actually talking to, the customer care department to find out what you actually sell or the sales team to find out what they actually need and then just do stuff.
Man,
Right.
such, and I've worked for a decade within like companies, right? And I've hired, outsourced, and worked, and I've seen so often. I think it's like a combination of two main elements of things, right? It's like on the agency side or on a consultant, they come in and they don't really know the full picture, and often a lot of them don't even try and figure out,
No.
like talking. No, I mean talking to their customers, like, that would be insane, like to figure out what they do and, what their experience is like and what they care about. I mean, it's this whole, I don't know if it's ego or what it may be that we just can just, oh, I can just read the minds of the audience and,
I think it's
um,
I think you just skip it. It's hard. And honestly,
yeah.
like what we teach a digital marketer is like quick wins.
Hmm.
Like get in there, get something done, like
Yeah.
prove that you're valuable, and then you could do the stuff you're supposed to do. And not that we teach that, but like that's essentially what you have to do to keep a job.
Yes. I mean, 100%. I've seen it over and over again. And I think sometimes we get sucked into it too because we love to do creative things and we love to, do cool stuff. And sometimes they come with a request that may not be from within the scope or the thing that you were supposed to do. So you're like, oh, sure, I'll get you that social post about whatever that has no impact just because you really wanted it. Versus coming in as that expert and saying, no, this is what I'm here to do. Now, when you want something done, sure, I'm still your team. However, if we don't do this, that's not going to matter because in a month from now, you're going to come to me wondering about this, not about that, right? So it's kind of sitting that the business owners themselves are so all the shiny objects that we have today are incredible, and I think they need all these different stuff versus letting something sit for just a few months, even or a month or a few weeks, or you can turn on an ad and have success very quickly if it works well, the offer's well, and everything's positioned. But you still have to figure it out. I mean, and it may not, right? And you may have to test and optimize for a moment. So it's just that patience and that understanding everyone wants the quick win. So you have to get something, but you also have to, people just have to get back into the understanding that things just take time. Like I wanted to believe that it takes 2 seconds, like my whole life.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah,
doesn't.
well, that was always the, get rich
Yeah.
quick. Like I think
No.
kind of the generation of that marketing.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
That's
don't work like a jerk. You should
yeah.
only be working an hour a week, and then you should go party for the rest of the time or some crap.
Yeah. Oh, all you need is a funnel. All you need is drop
One,
shipping. That's
oh,
all
the
you
automation, and I'm like, well, it just leads
yeah.
to bad business or temporary business. And I think everybody's kind of tired of temporary. I think when I sold my company 10 years ago, I was very short firm. I was like, well, I get some money and I get figure out something else, and then I'll figure out the next big thing. When now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had just kept on going, like I could
Mm,
have had a giant company by this point. And it wouldn't have taken that long, 10
right.
years, you think, oh, well, 10 years is a long time. It's like, yeah, 10 years. I haven't done any, like, I've done some things, but I haven't done anything that was as
Right.
significant as that. And then
Right.
what am I doing?
No, that was a major. I mean, I mean, I, I feel similarity to you in that besides the building the really cool thing that sold. I was freelancing for a couple of years, but I just never pushed growth. I was very mature in my business mindset and I was comfortable. I was like comfortable only because, one, much younger. We weren't, we were just, my wife was working, um, and I just could work 2, 3 hours a day servicing, the 5 clients I needed. Um, Up until she went back to school. I was like, oh, I need to actually, now there's no time to make that growth happen. I had 2 years to like that I was coasting, that was
Yeah.
comfortable, and we were doing okay. And the reality is I could have pushed it way harder. And like, again, like, 10 years now,
Yeah.
things, that's, I think, a very natural way. Obviously, you had a very, big win there at that point.
Well,
So it's
but I
interesting.
had massive losses too. It's kind
Sure.
of it was like two cycles of business growth where it was like I built something
Mm,
up and then catastrophically everything went wrong. It's probably
mm,
it's happened throughout. I mean,
mm.
through my failures, and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. That sucked too.
I don't know that you can avoid it. I mean, if you're actually out there
Yeah.
doing stuff and you're pushing the envelope and pushing your limits, I don't know that it's. I don't know that there is a. I thought I was. I was like, I've been in 10 years. I've been doing stuff. I've got a company. I just built a seven-figure one in like 8 months, like for someone else. But did all these things. I was like, oh yeah, I got this.
See,
And we've talked about that, but it's obviously ridiculous, and it's still you go through the things that everyone goes through, even though if you know the stuff, that's really going through it sometimes and learning how it's going to work for you. It's you versus you
yeah.
mainly,
Well,
right?
I think your point about the progression, where it's kind of like if you aren't pushing it, right? If you're coasting, if you're like, well, I'm doing pretty good, I'm just gonna keep this going. There's just no such thing. There's no such thing as coasting. Like you're either growing or you're not growing, and then those are your two options. Because the minute you get comfortable, you start getting behind. Which I hate to say that because I have had this realization over the last year. Like maybe I don't want to work 24/7
Hmm.
for the rest of my life, and maybe
Right.
literally anything is better than work. If I could, and so now my goal has shifted from like, oh, let me grow something big or make money or do whatever to
Yeah,
could I make the most money by working the least? And that it sounds like it's like, oh, you're gonna fluff up on work. It's like, no, I'm gonna figure stuff out. Like
yeah, and I'm
details.
sure you will, if anyone will. I'm sure you can. Yeah, I've come to the, when looking around about, how people actually create the type of life or goals that I'm looking for. It's not, a lot of it's not even with the work I'm doing right now, right? So it's learning how to tap in to those existing things, right? I'm looking at it as a market. I'm saying, okay, I know many marketing agency owners, and I know a lot of marketing consultants, and the ones doing really good are doing good. But the ones who are part of something, selling a product, have percentages, have whatever it may be that can actually sell, and they use that marketing for that. That's where the at least the economic potential is at for for I believe people in my industry. I could be wrong. I think people can
Oh,
have a lot of big retainers and a lot of big teams and a lot of big stuff, but that's not. Again, I want to create something that's truly scalable and not like, hey, I'm the number one plumbing agency, and you have hundreds of agencies, and the margins are 30% or whatever, and you know,
I
I don't
think you
know. I
gotta decide. You gotta say, like, I'm gonna be the best in this tiny segment, which takes a lot of discipline because you have to say no to other money, right? I think that's the
right,
we always try to teach the niching, right? Like, well, you got a niche, and
sure,
everybody, but I serve 20 different industries. And you're like, no, you
yeah,
don't. You do a really mediocre job in 20 places. Like, what if you just said, hey, this is the opportunity, be mature about it, do the research, and then say, this is the opportunity. It doesn't
yeah.
involve trying to deliver every service ever. It's like
For
it's this,
sure.
this tiny part.
And what would you enjoy like actually doing or marketing, right? Like I come, the facility I built was one of the world's most advanced kind of biohacking facilities, right? And we took it during the pandemic. We took it to like 88 and recurring within 7 to 8 months, right? And that was fun, like the machines and selling those things and the life it can provide people. And that's why I love the meds, more on the biohacking and wellness side of things, but meds often comes with it. Not because I don't like meds, but I just like to give people more of a holistic way of feeling better about themselves. And I think there's a lot of power in these tools that we're using, those cold plunges that I know you're doing,
Mhm.
and I've been doing as well. It's a good, there's so much power there.
No, well, I think what you've done is actually find, a space that you like, you're helping people. So it's serving multiple facets of your kind of personal objectives, which I think is the best way to do it because you have to feel good about what you're doing. Otherwise, you're either going to do a bad job at it or you're just not going to be interested enough to make it succeed. And so, I think you've done an excellent job of combining those two facets. I do want to
Yeah,
cover your biggest win and your biggest failure of
sure,
2023. So,
sure. So on the recap of the biggest one is definitely just working with digital marketer in the community and getting to the opportunity to speak in traffic and conversion. I'm beyond excited for that. I mean, I think it's very meaningful to me to be able to share some stuff, and also just the people who put trust in me to deliver to their audience. I see that. When you message me for some thoughts, I was like, all right, here, let's send it out, see what happens, right? So I'm very honored and I'm very excited for it. So that's I would say top win
that's
for
awesome.
sure.
Love that. And love that I contributed to it a little bit. That's awesome. But you're awesome. Everybody thinks that I do things for them, but I'm like, I'm only doing this because you're really good. Like you're a good person. You have good content. Like it's not like a handout.
No,
So
yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. Although I figured when I met you too, I was like this, you're not the type of person to just do something for whatever
oh no,
it's gotta, yeah, it's
million
gotta
reasons
make
behind it.
sense.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So love
But
that
biggest
win.
loss,
Biggest
yeah.
loss. Sorry about
I won't circle around it
that.
anymore. Well, the biggest loss is that So this is where we'll go into a bit of a different facet of this, but biggest loss, obviously. So for people listening, I'm obviously my accent is from Israel. I was born, in the United States. I was raised out there. The biggest loss was, October 7th events that happened was something that shook me to my core and made me it's hard for me to even put into words the feelings that I had. I was in 2014. I got out of there as a soldier. I fought in Protective Edge as a combat medic in a special forces unit. I left the military with some PTSD and things of that nature that weren't ideal. Was able to overcome most of those challenges within a year. And then after that, it's now has been a part of my history. And when all this went down and the pain and the loss and all that, I wanted to launch something to help from what I could from here, which was a newsletter. And got some support on it from a lot of great people. But I kept on getting into this loop in my mind that would be very, very difficult for me to get out of, PTSD wise, where I just shut down and was unable to take it to the finish line. And it's still, it's funny. I went into my MailChimp account and I saw that people even there's people signed up waiting for me to pull the trigger. And although it's the biggest loss of 2023, because I didn't pull through on it and something that's very meaningful to me, and I, was met with that resistance. I'm hoping that it's going to be a win in 2024.
That's awesome.
Or
Well, I'm sure it will be. And that's the thing. It's like you don't have to succeed in any time frame, really. There's no
sure,
joke. As long as you do it at some point. I think as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized that, like, all these time frames I put or requirements I put on myself are just, whatever. It's ego most of the time. Like, well, I want it done now. It's like, oh, it's gonna
right,
take a while, and there's nothing wrong with that because it'll probably be better at the end, right? And until you're all in, how are you gonna? How is it gonna do great anyways? So I do think,
right.
that's sort of a win that you started the process and you got through another difficult time, and you're gonna do even more next year. The only reason I like years really is just because you get to put a deadline on it. It's all made
It's
up.
true. Yeah, yeah. It is interesting because you can have a deadline any moment. Actually, one of my newest productivity hacks that's changed like the game for me in a really big way relates a lot to time. Kind of, I'm calling it I had a lot of thoughts of what makes a sports game so efficient and good and people actually care, right? And we talk about in digital marketer, right? We talk about the scorecard. You got to know if you're winning or not. But that also comes down to what happens every day. And what I've been doing is really cool. I use my Stream Deck to have like a timer of like eight, when I start the workday of just a whole day, like an 8 hour block. Yeah. Just overall, the aspect of what I found is that I really liked it when I tried this thing called Focus Blocks a while back, and it was like an hour at a time. They guide you through this focused kind of hour of write your priority for the hour. You're on Zoom with other
Mm.
people, and you put an hour of work in, and it's really cool, and it kept me accountable in a really cool way. But what I've learned is that I suck at time quite a lot. Like I don't know, like my whole like knowing how to gauge time is just really not my thing apparently. So what I've been doing is just setting a timer for the day, calling kind of like the daily game, right? So and it's measured by this is I have let's say 8 hours, and I don't I work probably more like 12 to 14, but at least I have my eight that are when I
Yeah.
show up to the office in the morning, and then until my like evening break with my family.
Nice.
Um, so 8 hours, and it's just going down throughout the day, right? It's ticking down, and basically I always know where I'm at. And then every hour I have another timer next to it that gives me my hourly kind of focus. I focus, okay, what's my priority? Basically, the points of, am I winning is by things I get done within the hour. So basically just gamify that aspect for time. So I know always, okay, there's 6 hours left, 4 hours left, 2 hours left, and I kind of have that pressure of, it's game time.
Oh, I love that. Well, and having that kind of task list, because I'm the same. Well, I'm just distracted. I'll actually have like 10 windows open with 10 different projects on them. I have
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
second computer I use a lot of times because I'm like
Oh yeah.
back and forth. But yeah, if you just have that I think the hourly deadline's perfect because you can't really do anything significant in less than an hour anyways. So, scheduling the time, I think that's a great tip.
Yeah,
And
it's been
realizing that
really,
you're bad at time. That's also hard.
man, if that was, you know, this is what I've learned also. This is why I was like a bad employee and a bad, I am more about I need to build stuff. I need to build stuff and launch stuff and sell stuff, market stuff. Any of like the day-to-day operational stuff, it's just not my strong suit.
Mhm.
It's not like I was only a good employee because I had those big wins every now and then. Like
No.
on a daily day stuff, I wasn't very good at that. And every now and then they would just catch up with me, all these little things that I should have been
Oh,
doing.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, I gotta go elsewhere. Um, until I figured out that I need to hire help for that portion of me that's not that good, or just embrace that I'm just more on the side of the creative building side rather than the operational day-to-day side, and I don't know time very well. So okay, here's a system to help with that to
Oh,
make
that's
sure that it gets done.
well, that's fantastic because I've gone through that same process as well. Kind of had to realize, kind of accept, like I'm not good at this. There's other people who can do better at it. Or the last side is just, the perfectionism where you're like, well, I have to
Hmm.
because I'm the one that's been the best at it. And it's like, no, you
Yeah.
gotta let that go. And you got to
Yeah.
say, it's not going to be perfect, somebody else doing it, but because they did it, you were able to do these 50 other things, which actually were better anyways.
We are definitely aligned on that because that's a big. I'll just do it myself. I'll do it better and faster. And the reality is, it's not faster if you never get to
No. Or if you just do it
it.
once and then you never
Yeah.
have time to do it, so you stop doing it, which is, I think for marketing and everything that we've kind of talked about is about
Right.
longevity. It's not about, hey, can I make a buck in the next few weeks or something? It's like, no, what can you make that's going to sustain you for a significant amount of time? And if it doesn't have that potential, should you actually be doing it anyways? And it's like,
Right.
unless you need it right now, then probably not. You should probably systematize, come up with your long-term thing, and you're good to go. Well, thank you
Right.
so much, Etan. This has been a great talk. Thank you for opening up about the wins and the failures, because I think that's important. And it's important for everybody to realize that, no loss is actually a loss until it's realized, which is something you learn in accounting or
fair,
stock market
fair
trading.
enough.
You haven't lost
Fair
anything
enough.
yet. So
No.
just gotta keep on going. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. We're gonna
Thank you
people learn
too,
more
man.
about you.
Well, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, Etan Polinger, just ETAN Polinger, and I'll, happy to connect over there.
Awesome. Well, definitely gonna have you on again. Thank you so much for coming on. Just for the
Yeah.
listeners out there, what you heard were some dadding in the background for both Etan and I.
Yeah.
Dogs
Well,
around. That's real life. So thank you so
yeah.
much. I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you, man. And we should definitely do this again in a capacity where we where we're more on our thing. But this is good. I think it's fun to
Whatever.
see our human side where babies are in the background, or kids or whatever. It's just part
So
of the reality of things.
instead of the, quiet studio, we each have the gorgeous vacation
Yeah,
background.
I know.
We're doing okay.
Yeah, it seems like that. Yeah, it seems like it.
There's some upsides to
Uh,
all the struggle.
that when you look at these backgrounds, I would say so. Yeah, we should work. Yeah, next time I'll go to a beachy spot and you go to
There
a
you go. That'll
wintry
go to the
spot. And
mountains. That's
yeah.
next week for me. We're heading out to Big Bear, so we'll
Oh,
do
nice. Like,
it.
awesome, man.
All right. Well,
Um,
thank you so much for listening. This has been Podcast Mark. Tune in next time for more random conversations that sort of have a point towards the end.